Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a seat. Oh, I so appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much, Reagan Ranch Center and Young America's Foundation, for allowing me this honor to get to share with you in this celebration of Ronald Reagan's centennial. I can't tell you how really humbling this is for my family and for me to get to be here. And today, out at the ranch, it was simply overwhelming and inspiring to get to be there riding horses. Riding horses on trails that Ronald Reagan had cleared. And I have to admit, we're a little bit more comfortable riding snow machine than horses. In fact, if you get a chance, ask Bristol how her experience went riding horses. But if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, Bristol. It was overwhelming, though, and to know the work that Ronald Reagan had put into that ranch as he had loved and cherished that land, those wide open spaces. There we were, riding horses along the trails that he had cleared and feeling the breeze in my face and being able to feel that warm southern air overhead. I knew instantly why Ronald Reagan loved that ranch. After riding horses, we got to drive a bit further higher up, and we got to look out over the Pacific Ocean. I knew instantly why it was he felt so inspired in that place. He loved that place. He loved it not just in visiting and enjoying its beauty. He loved it in caring for it, in working it, in building the fences with his own hands and chopping wood and clearing back the thick brush and clearing the trails. The ranch is unmistakably the home of a Western conservative who celebrated our pioneering spirit. And he thrived. He found inspiration. And he told people that he seemed to be able to see clearer out there in those wide open spaces of America's frontier. As an Alaskan, I proudly consider myself a Western conservative in the spirit of Ronald Reagan, in that tradition, because I know that he understood the small town pioneering spirit and values of hard work and rugged individualism and love thy neighbor. Those are the values that we grew up with. Those are the values Ronald Reagan embodied. They are the values of his ranch. Today there are hundreds of places that bear his name, but the ranch is one of the few that truly, when you are there, you can distinctly feel his spirit. And this is his home, of course. This home was his refuge, his still point in a turning world. And what a turbulent and turning world he faced in 1964, when, remember, he gave his famous speech, A Time for Choosing, and it was on behalf of Goldwater's campaign. That speech, which eventually came to be known simply as the speech, it gave birth to the Reagan Revolution, because it was more than just a campaign address. It was a call to action against a fundamental threat to freedom. It was given by a former Democrat who had been former Union leader who had left his party because his party had left him. Reagan saw the dangers in LBJ's Great Society. He refused to sit down and be silent as our liberties were eroded by an out-of-control, centralized government that overtaxed and overreached in utter disregard of constitutional limits. He saw our nation at a critical turning point. We could choose one direction or the other: socialism or freedom and free markets, collectivism or individualism. In his words, we could choose the swamp or the stars. Not a typical jovial speech of Reagan's that he gave that day. Remember, we got so used to before, and certainly after, hearing more of the chipper, gipper. We'd hear more of his jokes and more of the humor that he was so known for, but not that day, because the vision that he laid out for us, he outlined this vision that was quite stark. it was more somber than normal, because that vision that was so stark, it was based on the fact that, see, unlike others, Reagan seemed to be able to look out over the horizon and see what unsound policies of big government expansionism and a foreign policy of Soviet appeasement, where that would ultimately end, and that was in decline and defeat. He wanted to know then if Americans still had the courage and the will to not only endure, but to arise and succeed and soar. So he asked us candidly and soberly that day. He asked us whether we still believed in our capacity for self-government, or whether we abandoned the American Revolution and confessed that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can for ourselves. Those were strong words, and the country as a whole wasn't quite ready to hear them. But his message did catch on slowly. He was mocked, and he was ridiculed and criticized. He put up with so much, and he was able to handle that criticism, though. I talked to some of his former colleagues, his friends today, about how did he handle that criticism that came his way. And, you know, they said, oh, he let that criticism just kind of roll off his back like a duck with water off his back. But not when it came to Nancy. He said, don't touch my Nancy. Great respect for that. His message did catch on, though. In 1964, the conservative movement heard him. In 1966, California listened to him. In 1976, finally, the GOP rank and file listened to him. In 1980, the nation listened to him. And in 1984, the whole world heard him. So by the time he left office, Ronald Reagan had effectively defeated the expansionist ideology of the Great Society. And remember, Bill Clinton gave its eulogy sometime later when he declared that the era of big government was over. But if history teaches us anything, it's that bad ideas are never gone for good. And for the last 2 decades, folks, we have seen big government slowly encroach on us again. And it was subtle at first, couched in the language of progress and compassion. But when the financial crisis erupted in 2008, no more subtlety there. No, big government rose up and presumptuously declared itself the solution to our problems. Determined, of course, the left is to never let a good crisis go to waste. And 2 years later, look around, we see the results, and it's staggering. A devastating $14 trillion national debt, a $1.5 trillion deficit, a mind-boggling 84% increase in federal spending, a dangerous 17% real unemployment rate, and a heartbreaking 2.9 million home foreclosures just last year alone. That is staggering. The past 2 years, Americans learned to appreciate like never before the meaning of Reagan's famous line. Remember, he said the 9 most frightening words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Big government's help always seems capricious, expensive, and destructive. Perhaps nowhere is this more evident than right here in beautiful California, where some of the nation's richest, most fertile farmland lays fallow, and the livelihoods of thousands of hardworking family farmers are destroyed. And they're destroyed all because some faceless, dim government bureaucrat took away their lifeline, their water, and they claimed that it was in order to protect a 2-inch fish. Now, where I come from, we'd call that bait. And there is no need to destroy people's lives over that bait. If President Reagan were alive today to see what's happening to his beloved Golden State, the hills of the Central Valley would echo with his outrage. Now, nationally, for many of us today, that outrage, that moment of outrage, it came with the passage of Obamacare. For liberals, of course, it was a crowning achievement, government control of health care that had been a goal of theirs for generations. They stopped at nothing to get it passed, not even the Constitution. And they sowed the seeds, though, of their defeat in the process. Last November, the American people rose up and decisively rejected big government. We don't want it, we can't afford it, so we fired many who had forced it upon us. We, the people, said enough is enough. But just days ago, in the State of the Union address, less than 90 days after that freedom message was sent at the ballot box, and it was an historic election. Yet we were just told, no, the era of big government, it's here to stay, and you're going to pay for it, whether you want to or not. But they can't sell it to us with the old sales pitch anymore. So this new version isn't just the tried and tired liberal nanny state of the Great Society. No, now it's much worse, and it's couched in the language of national greatness, which I think to the left, that is their version of American exceptionalism. It is an exceptionally big government where bureaucrats declare would declare that we shall be great and innovative and competitive, but not by individual initiative anymore. No, it's by government decree. It's the same old tax and spend policies, or rather, now it's borrow and spend and then tax the job creators. But we'll no longer call it government spending. For a while, they called it stimulus. But that didn't work because clearly it didn't stimulate anything but a Tea Party. So now they'll call it investing. Okay? But you have to ask yourself, well, if government overspending is investing, then bankruptcy would be a sign of economic strength. And it just isn't so. Sure, they'll try, though. And they have all sorts of half-baked ideas on what to spend, invest our hard-earned money on for their idea of national greatness. These investments include everything from solar shingles to fast train tracks. But as we struggle to merely service our unsustainable debt, the only thing these investments will get us is a bullet train to bankruptcy. To me, it is so odd that the answer to our problems is green energy. It plays a curiously big part in these investments. Now, green energy sound ideas there I'm fine with, we should all be fine with. I'm in favor of a sound all-of-the-above approach to energy independence. But all of the above means conventional sources of energy, the kind, that we actually use today reliably to fuel our economy. Our own oil, for one. And our natural gas, our coal, our nuclear. But in Washington, they've done everything in their power to stymie responsible domestic drilling. And that means hundreds of thousands of well-paying jobs will not be created. That means that Americans will pay more at the pump. It means that we're continuing then to transfer hundreds of billions of your U.S. dollars to foreign regimes to purchase energy from them. They do not have America's best interests at heart. This is dangerous. This is insane.